Saturday. Yes, this day is the Sabbath day. The seventh day is Saturday. What do we keep? We keep the first day. What do we keep as the Sabbath day? We keep the first day. Who changed it? It is the Catholic Church. Who changed it? It is the Catholic Church. What is the
Shalom, shalom, shalom. This is Abshai of Israelite Way, and this lesson presentation study is entitled, When is the Sabbath? When is the Sabbath? Exodus 20 verse 8 says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, or to set it apart. So one of the key words in this verse is the word day, because in order for us to accurately determine when the Sabbath starts and when the Sabbath ends, we have to know the difference between day and night. We must know the difference between day and night according to the scriptures, because we've been taught that 24 hours equal one day. But is that accurate according to the Bible? Does the Bible teaches us that 24 hours equals one day? In this lesson presentation study, I'll be using the Creator's name, which is Yahuwah, and the Messiah's name, Yahushua. In this lesson presentation study, I'll be reading from the translation called the Scriptures, and we don't put any scriptures above other translations. The main important thing is to have understanding. So let's start here with Jeremiah 17 verse 4. It says, and thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. So Jeremiah 17 verse 4, prophesied that we shall discontinue from our heritage. And now that we're waking up to our true identity, we started to look in scripture to identify when is the Sabbath. But there's so much confusion because so many different calendars are being used to try to identify when the Sabbath actually starts and when the Sabbath actually ends. But in this Genesis, the first verse kind of establish and identify when the Sabbath starts and when the Sabbath ends. So few Sabbath observers have looked into the scriptures to see if this Friday sunset or Saturday sunset is a true scriptural Sabbath, the seventh day of the week. So the day that this world commonly calls Saturday surely is the right day of the week, the seventh day, the true scriptural Sabbath is, since from many ages the children of Israel have been acknowledging that day of the week as the seventh day. But when does the true weekly Sabbath start? Does it really start at sundown Friday and end at sundown Saturday? Where do scriptures say that? So Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. So let's go back to the beginning to kind of establish a few things in order to determine when the Sabbath starts and when the Sabbath ends. So Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 says, and Yahuwah said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate, that's the key word there, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years. So it's important to understand here in this verse that Yah says he separated the day from the night, right? But what man have done, because man is rebellious, and the book of Daniel says man attempt to change time and laws, and what he has done, he has taught us that 24 hours equals one day. And we read from the scripture here where Yah says he separated the day from the night. So if he separated the day from the night, day cannot be 24 hours, right? And night also cannot be 24 hours. right? Because Yah separated the day from the night within a 24-hour cycle, right? So that 24-hour cycle cannot be 24 hours of daylight, right? Part is day and part is night, as the Most High said He has done here in this verse, that He separated the day from the night. So Genesis 1 verse 15 says, "And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and it came to be so." Genesis 1 verse 16, "And Yahuwah made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night and the stars." So here we see that Yah made a greater light, and we know that the greater light is the sun, right, to rule the day. So when you see the sunlight outside, that means that it's day, right? And when the sun goes down and it gets dark, we see the moon, right? We clearly see the moon at night. So now we know that that is night, right? So there's a difference between day and night. So Yah already told us when to determine when it's day and when to determine when it's night. Very simple, very easy. Because if you give a Bible to somebody who has never read the Bible before in their life, the first time they ever read in the Bible, and they read this verse and they come back and ask them, when is the day and when is the night, they could accurately tell you, because it's right there, right, in plain sight, that the day is when the greater light is out, when the sun is out, and when it gets dark and the moon is shining, that's when the night, that's the night, right? Very simple, very easily for us to establish the difference between day and night. So Genesis 1 verse 17 says, "And Yahweh set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth," verse 18, "and to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate," there we go again, "to separate the light from the darkness. And Yahweh saw that it was good." So if Yahweh separated the light from the darkness, that means 24 hours cannot equal one day, right? Because the sun is when the day is when the sun is out, right? And the night is when we can clearly see the moon, right? So that means that it's not 24 hours of day, right, according to the scriptures. So here where we see the day is the light, separated, divided from the night, that is the darkness, right? So the true scriptural weekly Sabbath is not from sunset to sunset, as most all Sabbath keeping churches, assemblies, and congregations wrongly teach and keep, right? Genesis 1 verse 3 says, "And Yahuwah said, the light come to be, and the light came to be." Genesis 1 verse 4, "And Yahuwah saw the light, and it was good, and Elohim separated the light from the darkness." There's that word, separate. So don't join them together and call the night and day 24 hours of day. It does not make any sense, right? So if the 24 hours equal one day, so how many hours equal the night? How many hours equal the night if 24 hours equals one day? Genesis 1 verse 5, "And Yahweh called the light day," right? He called the light day, right? He didn't call the night day. He didn't call 24 hours of day, right? He only called the light portion day, right? And the darkness he called night. So the dark portion he called night, right? "And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the first day." And this is where a lot of people tripped upon when it said there came to be evening and there came to be morning the first day. So we're going to explain that. So Genesis 1 verse 5, let's look at that again. "And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the first day." So if you're counting from evening to morning, that's a period of night, right? That's the time that you're in your bed sleeping, right? 12 hours between evening and from evening to morning, right? That's 12 hours. That's a period of night. So the scripture here, as you read it, in its context, it does not say from evening to morning, right? It does not say from evening to morning. It says there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the first day. So now the scripture is talking about day. It's not talking about night, right? It's talking about day. So a day, we know, has a morning and it has an evening, because the day starts at morning and it ends at evening. So that's what Genesis 1 verse 5 is teaching us, that the day consists of an evening and a morning. Right? So we see here in this illustration that a day has an evening and a morning, 12 hours. Right? Technically it should be 12 hours, depending on where you are on the earth. So, and a night also consists of 12 hours, and it also has an evening and a morning. So in Genesis 1 verse 5, it's only talking about the day. It's not talking about the night. So when you look at the illustration with the day here, you see a day as an evening and a morning, right? 12 hours, right? Because the scripture says Yah separated the day from the night, and now it's talking about the night, and it says that it's talking about the day, and it says here that the day as an evening and the day also as a morning, and the day starts in the morning and it ends at evening. And after the day ends, the night begins. And night begins at evening and it ends at morning. So day, the Hebrew word for day is yom, right? The period of light, daylight hours. And the Hebrew word for night is lela, right? Is the darkness after sunset. So you don't see anywhere in the scriptures where it speaks of 24 hours of yom. There's nowhere in the scriptures that says 24 hours equals 1 yom. Nowhere, right? In scriptures, they always establish the difference between day and night. Everywhere in the scriptures, it's always day, night, day, night, day, night. Because, it's already established from the beginning, the difference between day and night. So if you understand the difference between day and night, then you can accurately, right, understand when the Sabbath starts and also when the Sabbath ends. So the day is the period of light between sunrise and sunset, as distinguished from the night, the period of light between dawn and nightfall, the interval from sunrise to sunset. Right? The night is the period between sunset and sunrise, especially the hours of darkness. Exodus 20 verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. So in Exodus 20 verse 8, it says the Sabbath day. There's no mention of any Sabbath night. Right? And previously we just went over the difference between day and night, when the night starts and when the night ends, when the day starts and when the day ends. So the Sabbath day is the seventh day, not the sixth night, not the sixth day, not the first day, but the seventh day, right? So Exodus 20 verse 9 says, 6 days you labor and shall do all your work, right? So 6 days you labor, and at night, the night is for us to rest, so our bodies can heal, right? That's what the purpose of the night is, for us to rest. Sabbath means to stop, right? It means to stop. That's what it means, pause. That's what Sabbath means, to stop. So Exodus 20 verse 10 says, but the 7 days is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. You do not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Exodus 20 verse 11, for in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart. So the Most High stopped on the 7th day. He paused on the 7th day, right? So the word work is a very interesting word, because in the dictionary definition it says physical or mental effort or activity directed toward the production of accomplishing something. So any form of force, anything that you do, is considered work, right? In some ways. So now the word work in our scriptures where Sabbath says we should not do any work, it means any secular activity that is not an act of necessity which supersedes our thought and focus from the Most High. Yeah, that's what the word work in the Exodus chapter 20 means, that any sort of activity, any secular activity that is not an act of necessity, because act of necessity can be performed on the Shabbat, right? That is not a secular activity. For instance, teaching, right? Teaching at Shabbat class, that's work, right? So that is excluded, you know, from violent in the Shabbat, right? If you have to travel to get to a Shabbat class, you know, if you have to drive, you know, to get to Shabbat class and to fellowship with your brothers and sisters, driving is work, right? Driving is a form of work, but it's an act of necessity, right? It's an act of necessity to get to your destination, so you could have Shabbat class with your ox and a coolies. Exodus 31 verse 12, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, and you shall speak to the children of Israel, saying, the Sabbaths you are to guard by all means, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, to know that I, Yahweh, am setting you apart. Verse 14, and you shall guard the Sabbath, for it is a set apart to you. Everyone who profanes it shall certainly be put to death. For anyone who does work on it, that being shall be cut off from among his people. So the Most High is very serious about this day, because I look at the Sabbath as though as being on a date with the Most High, right? And nobody likes to be stood up, right, on a date. And so the Most High takes his Sabbath day very seriously. Exodus 31 verse 15, for 6 days work is done, and on the 7th day is a Sabbath of rest, set apart to Yahweh. Everyone doing work on the Sabbath day shall certainly be put to death. Verse 16, and the children of Israel shall guard the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generation as an everlasting covenant. Flipping back to Genesis 1 verse 3 to 5, it says, let there be light, and there was light, and Yah saw the light, that it was beneficial. And Yahweh divided, separated between the light and between the darkness, and Yahweh called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening came to be, and then the morning came to be. So day 1, the first day, Yahweh saw, observed, considered only the light that he made, that it was beneficial. Right? Genesis 1 verse 3 to 4. However, he said no word about the darkness, since Yahweh is light, the Father of light, dwelling in the light, and in him there is no darkness. 1 John 1 verse 5, and this is a message which we have heard from him, and announced to you, that Yahweh is light, and in him is no darkness at all. So that's why the Most High is about the light, right? It's not about the darkness. So that's why he establishes his Sabbath on the 7th day, not on the 7th night or the 6th night, but on the 7th day, where there is light. 1 John 1 verse 6, we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and are not doing the truth. So this is where people hide their secret sins, in darkness, not in the light, so all can see. So that's why the Most High is about the light. Everything is in the light, so we all can see, right? So we don't hide nothing from the Most High, and we try to hide things in darkness, right? But the Most High sees all. You can hide it from somebody else, right? But you cannot hide it from the Most High, and that's where we always try to hide our secret sins, is in the darkness. And that's why the Most High is all about the light. 1 John 1 verse 7, But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Yahushua the Messiah, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. James 1 verse 17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change nor shadow of turning. 1 Timothy 6 verse 16, who alone has immortality, dwelling in unapproachable light, whom no one has seen or is able to see, to whom be respect and everlasting might. Revelation 21 verse 22, and I saw no dwelling place in it, for Yahuwah El Shaddai is its dwelling place, and the Lamb. Verse 23, and the city had no need of the sun nor of the moon to shine in it, for the esteem of Yahuwah lightened it, and the Lamb is its lamp. Revelation 21:24. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the sovereigns of the earth bring their esteem into it. Verse 25. And its gates shall not be shut at all by day, for night shall not be there. Revelation 22 verse 5. And night shall be no more, and they shall have no need of a lamp or the light of the sun, because Yahweh Almighty shall give them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. So it's a light that appeals to the Most High, right? Not the darkness. And that's why he used darkness to represent that which is of the unrighteousness, and the light represents righteousness. Genesis 2 verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were complete, and all their array. Verse 2. And the seventh day Yahweh completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. So on the seventh day, that's when Yahweh completed his work, right? He was not creating on the seventh day, but on the seventh day, that's when he said it's done, right? That's when he paused, and that's when he stopped, right, for any type of activity on the seventh day, because on the seventh day it says it's completed, and that's when he rested on the seventh day. Genesis 2 verse 3. And Yahweh blessed the seventh day and set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work which Yahweh in creating had made. John 9 verse 4. It is necessary for me to work the works of him who sent me while it's day. Night is coming when no one is able to work. John 9 verse 5. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. 1 John 1 verse 5. And this is the message which we have heard from him and announced to you, that Yahweh is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Therefore, this true scriptural weekly Sabbath is not from sunset to sunset, nor from evening to evening, nor from dark to dark, as most all Sabbath keeping churches, assemblies, and congregations wrongly teach and keep. The Creator Yah said that his Sabbath is the seventh day, and he said that the day is the light, separated, divided from the night, not united, joined together. The sun ruling, governing the day, right, the light portion, and by the moon, including the stars, ruling, governing the night, the darkness portion. The Sabbath is a seventh light time period, or daytime rule, governed by the sun, that runs from morning to evening. From morning to evening, right, is a period of day, right? That's the day portion, right, from morning to evening. Not 24 hours is one day, right? The scriptures does not teaches us that 24 hours equals one day. And we're going to see what the Messiah has to say about that. So Yahushua the Messiah, right, Mashiach said that the day has 12 hours of light, and not 24 hours of light and darkness. John 11 verse 9 says, Yahushua answered, are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. Verse 10, but if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. So the day represents the light and the righteousness, and the night is the darkness, the evil, right? That's what the difference between the night and day, and that's what those represents, and that's why the Most High separated, right? He separated righteousness from unrighteousness, right? So that's what the Most High did. That's why he established the light represents the day, and the darkness represents the night. Righteousness versus unrighteousness. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 6 says, for Yahuwah, who said, let light shine out of darkness, is the one who has shown in our hearts for the enlightening of the knowledge of the esteem of Yahuwah in the face of Yahushua the Messiah. So we're going to look in scriptures at some examples of when a day starts and when the day ends. And Matthew 20 verse 1 says, for the reign of the heavens is like a man, a householder, who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. Verse 2. And when he had agreed with the workers for a silver piece a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Verse 3. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. Verse 4. And he said to them, You two go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I shall give you. And they went. Verse 5. Having gone out again about the 6th and the 9th hour, he did likewise. Verse 6. And about the 11th hour, having gone out, he found others idle, and said to them, Why do you stand here idle all day? Verse 7. They said to him, Because no one hired us. And he said to them, You two go into the vineyard, and whatever is right you shall receive. Verse 8. And when evening came, right, it's the end of the day, so evening came, the master of the vineyard said to his manager, Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last to the first. Because evening came because it's the end of the day, right? And that's when the workers are paid their wages at the end of the day. So here we understand that the day ends at evening, right? Matthew 20 verse 9. And when those came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a silver piece. Verse 10. And when the first came, and they thought they would receive more, but two they received each a silver piece. Verse 11. And when they received it, they grumbled against the householder. Verse 12, saying, These last have worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the heat of the day. Right? So when was the day? During the time when the sun is out, they work in the heat, right? And at the evening, that's when the day ended, right? The day ends at evening, right? And when the day ends at evening, the next portion is the night. So the night begins after the day ends, right? Another 12 hours of day does not start after the day ends at evening, right? The night starts after the day ends at evening. So Exodus 16 verse 22. And it came to be on the 6th day, and they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. Right? So on the 6th day they were gathering. They're not gathering, from Thursday night. Right? They weren't gathering from Thursday night. They're gathering on the 6th day, from Friday. Right? That's when they were gathering our bread and our omers on that day. So Exodus 16 verse 23 says, And he said to them, This is what Yahuwah has says, tomorrow is a rest, a Sabbath, right? Set apart to Yahuwah that which you have bake, and that which you have cook, and lay up for yourself all that is left over to keep it until morning. So the next morning, tomorrow, that's when the Sabbath is, right? They didn't say tonight, right? Is the Sabbath. They say tomorrow, right? Not the 6th night, Friday night. They didn't call Friday night the Shabbat. They called it tomorrow, the next day, the 7th day, right? Is the Sabbath. Exodus 16 verse 25. And Moshe says, Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to Yahuwah. Today you do not find it in the field. So on the 7th day, he said to eat it today, right? He did not say eat it Friday night, right? Because if you eat it all Friday night, there will be nothing left tomorrow, the next day, and the Sabbath, right? So they gather as much as they can on the 6th day, because the 6th day is the preparation day, right? And then the next day, the Sabbath, they have enough, so they don't have to go out in the field to try to gather more food, because there was none on the Sabbath day, right? Which is the 7th day, right? Exodus 16 verse 26. Gather it 6 days, and on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, there is none, right? So on the 7th day, there is none, right? Not on Friday evening, right? Because Friday during the day, that's when they gather as much as they can, so they have enough left over for the Sabbath day. So the Sabbath day is the 7th day, right? Not the 6th night, right? But the 7th day. Exodus 16 verse 27. And it came to be that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none, right? On the seventh day they went. There was nothing on the seventh day. Right? So when they wake up in the morning, right, which is the seventh day, that's when they went out to see if there's anything on the ground for them to gather, but there was nothing on the seventh day. Right? In the morning, the next day, tomorrow, right? After the sixth day is the Sabbath, not the sixth night. Is not the Sabbath. That's a period for you to rest, so your body can heal and replenish. So when you wake up the next day, the new day, right? Then you at full strength, right? On that day. Jeremiah 31 verse 35 says, "Thus says Yahweh, He gives the sun for a light by day, and the laws of the moon and the stars for a light by night. Who stirs up the sea and its waves roar, Yahweh of hosts is His name." Even in the book of Jeremiah, like I said, all through the scriptures, they always know the difference between day and night. They always speak of day and night. They never call day 24 hours one day. Never. Nowhere in scriptures they mention that 24 hours equals one day. Clearly the true Sabbath, the seventh day, is the seventh period of light between morning from dawn to sunrise. Judges 19 verse 9. "And the man arose to go, he and his concubine and his servant. But his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, See, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Stay here and let your heart be glad, and you shall rise early tomorrow for your journey, and you shall go to your tent." So the day is coming to an end at evening. So the next day starts tomorrow. So that's why he wants him to stay the night, and tomorrow, the next day, he can start his journey. Exodus 18 verse 13. "And it came to be on the next day that Moshe sat to rightly rule the people, and the people stood before Moshe from morning until evening." Right? Luke 24 verse 19. "And they urged him strongly, saying, Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day has declined. And he went in to stay with them." Matthew 28 verse 1. "And now after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Miriam from Magdala and the other Miriam came to see the tomb." So after the Sabbath, so the Sabbath ended evening, and in the morning, right, the next day, right, that's when the woman went to the tomb, the next day, right, after the Sabbath, the seventh day. Luke 24 verse 1. "And on the first day of the week at early dawn," so the first day of the week at early dawn, which is Sunday, "they came to the tomb bringing the spices which they had prepared." So the first day starts on Sunday morning at sunrise. That's when the day begins. Day begins at sunrise and ends in the evening at sunset. So let's give an understanding on the Nehemiah incident, because a lot of people will take this out of context to prove that the Sabbath starts at evening. So Nehemiah 13 verse 15 says, "In those days I saw in Yehuda those threading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and loading donkeys with wine, grapes and figs and all kinds of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I warned them on the day they sold food." Verse 16, "And men of Zor dwelt there, bringing in fish and all kinds of good, and sold them on the Sabbath to the children of Yehuda and in Jerusalem." Verse 17, "Then I contented with the nobles of Yehuda and said to them, What evil matter is this that you are doing, profaning the Sabbath day?" Nehemiah 13 verse 18, "Did not your fathers do the same, so that our Yah brought all this evil on us and on this city? Yet you bring added wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath." Nehemiah 13:19, "And it came to be at the gates of Jerusalem as it began to be dark before the Sabbath. This is key here, right? It was becoming dark before the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is the next day, right? It didn't say it became dark at Sabbath, right? But before the Sabbath, they closed the gates. So that I commanded the gates to be shut, and commanded that they should not be opened until after the Sabbath. And I stationed some of my servants at the gates, so that no burdens will be brought in on the Sabbath day. So at the night, they make sure they close the gate, because these merchants were coming on the Sabbath day, bringing all their merchandise to be sold on the Sabbath. So they make sure on the sixth night, right, that they close the gate before the Sabbath, right? As it was becoming dark on the Friday night, they make sure they close the gate at Friday night before those merchants come and try to enter into the gates, on the Sabbath day. So they make sure that it's closed at night, right? On Friday night, the gates is closed before the Shabbat, right? As it began to be dark before the Shabbat. So the Shabbat is the next day. So they'll make sure they want to do it before morning, right? So it wouldn't make sense for them to wake up early in the morning and Shabbat to close the gates, right? So, because some of those merchants could have come early, right, during the night, right? And some of those merchants even come on the sixth day and camp, outside the gates, and then start setting up shop on the Shabbat day. So that's why they make sure they close the gates before it got dark, right, before the Shabbat, right? So the merchants cannot enter in and start profaning the Shabbat. So now, how can it be dark before the Shabbat if the Shabbat occurs during the night, as well as it's supposed to begin at evening? Think about it. So doesn't the term "it began to be dark" refer to the evening, at which point the Sabbath allegedly begins? So why do we have it that this was also before the Shabbat? So this means that this Shabbat rightly occurs only during daylight hours, from morning to evening, when it began to be dark. The gates were commanded to be shut, not because the Shabbat was about to begin. It would be wise to closing the gates before it became fully dark, right? Rather than close the gates in the morning, right? So, because many of those merchants would probably already been inside the gates, right? And it would be, a tough task trying to get them out, right? So that's why you make sure you close the gate at dark before the Shabbat starts, on the seventh day, right? So that those merchants will be shut out when they approach the gates early on Shabbat morning. So that's why they close the gates the night on Friday night, right, before the Shabbat on the seventh day. Leviticus chapter 23. We have to understand in this chapter the difference between the 7-day Sabbath and the annual Sabbath, because sometimes Leviticus chapter 23 is used to justify Sabbath being 24 hours from Friday evening to Saturday evening. So the weekly Sabbath, right, and the annual feast Sabbath, right, at the appointed time Sabbath. The difference between these Sabbaths is that the weekly Sabbath is only on the seventh day, right, from sunrise to sunset. But the annual feast Sabbath, now, these are high Sabbaths. So these Sabbaths are 24 hours, right, from sunset to sunset the next day, right? So that's the difference between the weekly Sabbath and the annual festival Sabbath. These Sabbaths were 24 hours, right? 24 hours, they were observed for 24 hours, but the weekly Sabbath, it was only the seventh day, right? So in Leviticus chapter 23 verse 1, it says, "And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahuwah, which you are to proclaim, is set up our gatherings by appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, and the 7th day is a Sabbath of rest, a set up our gathering. You do no work. It is a Sabbath to Yahuwah in all your dwellings." So here in Leviticus chapter 1 verse 23, he's speaking of the 7th day Sabbath, right? The 7th day Sabbath, which is on the 7th day, right? So when we go on to Leviticus chapter 23, verse 4 to 8 now it's talking about the annual Sabbaths. Two different Sabbaths is spoken of in this same chapter, right? Leviticus chapter 23, verse 4 says, these are the appointed times of Yahuwah set up or gathering, which you are to proclaim at the appointed times, right? In the first month, on the 14th day of the month between the evenings, is the Passover to Yahuwah, right? And on the 15th day of this month is the festival of unleavened bread. Yahuwah, 7 days you eat unleavened bread. Verse 7, and on the first day you have a set up or gathering, you do no servile work. Verse 8, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah for 7. On the 7th day is a set up or gathering, you do no servile work. So on the annual festival, these are high Sabbaths. So these high Sabbaths is 24 hours, right? When the weekly 7-day Sabbath is only on the 7th day, right? That's the difference between the annual Sabbath and the 7th-day weekly Sabbath. The Passover feast was to be observed all night, as stated in Exodus chapter 12. Thus it ran into the first day of unleavened bread, making that day a high Sabbath. So because it was a high Sabbath, right, it was observed for 24 hours. That's the difference between the 7-day Sabbath and the high Sabbath. The 7-day Sabbath is only from sunrise to evening, but the high Sabbath was from evening to evening. 24 hours. So a regular Sabbath was and is from morning to evening, but a high Sabbath or a mega Sabbath, it was larger than usual, thus the previous night was attached to it. There are only 2 high Sabbaths found in the entire scriptures, and they are the first day of unleavened bread and the day of atonement. So John chapter 19 verse 31 says, therefore, since it was the preparation day, that the body should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for the Sabbath was a high one. So the Day of Atonement was called a Sabbath by Yah himself back in the book of Leviticus chapter 23. Thus the 7-day Sabbath was not only Sabbath observed by the Israelites. In fact, the high Sabbath was referred to in John chapter 19 verse 31 is in fact the first day of unleavened bread, which fell not on a Saturday, right? It fell on a different day than the weekly Sabbath, right? So Yahushua was not executed on Friday, contrary to popular Christian belief, for that would not complete 3 days and 3 nights, because it cannot get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday evening to Sunday morning, right? It's impossible. So Yahushua's execution, right? 1 John 17, but Yahuwah appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So in scriptures you always see the distinction between day and night, right? You never see 24 hours day. It's always day and night, right? Matthew 12 verse 40. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the great fish, so shall the Son of Adam be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Right? So we see this illustration here. We see that it was a Wednesday that he was executed or crucified, and he was risen and Sabbath after sunset, right? And Saturday after sunset, that's when he rose. And that's how you get 3 days and 3 nights from Wednesday evening, right, back to Saturday evening, right? 3 days and 3 nights. So here the breakdown of the timeline with Yahushua's execution and resurrection. On Tuesday, Yahushua ate evening Passover meal with his disciples. Yahushua was then betrayed by Judas, arrested during the night, brought before the high priest. And Wednesday was Yahushua's execution, and he died. This was a preparation day for the annual, not weekly Shabbat, which began at sunset. Yahushua's body was placed in the tomb at twilight, because the annual Shabbat was on the Thursday, right? And the weekly Shabbat was always on the seventh day, right? So that's why the high Sabbath was observed for 24 hours, because of the Passover and of the festival of unleavened bread. So that's why it was observed for 24 hours from evening to the evening. But the weekly 7 day Sabbath has never changed. It was always from sunrise to sunset, right? So Thursday, this was a high day Shabbat. The first day of unleavened bread, right? It is described as the day after the day of preparation, right? So Friday, the high day Sabbath has now passed, right? The woman bought and prepared spices for anointing Yoshua's body before resting on the weekly Sabbath day, right? So on that Friday after the Shabbat, they went out and they buy spices for anointing the body. So on Saturday now, the woman rested on the weekly Sabbath according to the fourth commandment. Joshua rose just before sunset, exactly 3 days and 3 nights, right, after burial, fulfilling the son of Jonah and authenticating Joshua's messiahship. So Sunday, the woman brought the prepared spices early in the morning while it was still dark. Joshua had already risen, right? So in the dawn, when the transition of night to day, early in the morning, the woman went, but they did not see Yahushua because he had already risen. So let's look at these couple of scriptures once more. And Genesis 1 verse 4 says, "And Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim separated the light from darkness." Genesis 1 verse 5, "And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the first day." So now we see that Elohim separated the day from the darkness. And if we look back at the fourth commandment, where it says, "Remember the Sabbath day," now we can easily identify when the Sabbath is. The Sabbath is the seventh day, not the sixth night or the seventh night or the first day. It is the seventh day, because the Most High called the light day and the darkness he called night. So that's why we observe the seventh day, not the sixth night or the seventh night or the first day. So we see Yahweh's 7-day weekly cycle, and we see that all the first 6 days from Sunday to Friday, they all look alike, and we see that work is performed each and every day, right? And we also rest at night, where we go to sleep so we can repair the body. And also we see that worship can be performed every day of the week, because worship is not just a gathering on the Shabbat, right? And singing songs and praying and reading scriptures, right? That's not the only way to perform worship. Worship is also performed according to Psalms 1 verse 2 if we meditate on the Most High daily. When we meditate on the Most High daily, we actually worship in Him, right? Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13 says our whole duty is to keep His commandments. So when we keep His commandments, right, we're actually worshiping, and we're supposed to keep His commandments 7 days a week, right? And so we see that on the seventh day is Yah's Sabbath, right? It's His set apart day on the seventh day. So that's why the day is set apart from all the other 6 days of the week. And we see that on the seventh day, work is not required, right? We're commanded not to work on the seventh day of the week. So all secular activity that we perform on the first 6 days of the week is not allowed on the Sabbath day, on the seventh day, right? And we see now John 19 verse 14 says, "It is necessary for me to work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one is able to work." So we see at nighttime was not a time that we look forward to going to work. It was a time we look forward to going to sleep, to rest, to repair our bodies, right? So now we see in this chart here, Satan also takes Yah's 7-day weekly cycle, and what he has done, he has established the Sabbath on the first day of the week. So Yah's Sabbath is on the 7th day of the week. Satan's Sabbath is on the first day of the week. So on the first day of the week, work is not required. But if we look and see on the 7th day of the week, what he has done, he has made the 7th day identical to the other days of the week, from Monday to Friday. He has made the Sabbath identical to those days, but now he has made Sunday a separate day, make it now the new Sabbath. So this new Sabbath that Satan has established is total rebellion against the Most High Yah's law. The Most High Yah in His Word, in His commandments, has established the 7th day as the Sabbath, not the first day of the week. The first day of the week is total rebellion against the Most High's laws regarding the 7th day Sabbath. So it is very clear that the true Sabbath does not include the night. Nowhere the scriptures say to keep set apart and observe the 6th night, 7th night, or first day. Yah clearly said to work 6 days and to rest and keep set apart the 7th day, the Sabbath. Yah is loving, fair, wise Father, and He gave us the nights when we are free to rest, sleep, and refresh, or even work if we need to do so. Nowhere the Creator and Father commanded to keep set apart the night except for 2 special occasions, as Passover and Atonement nights, that He did specify to keep them set apart for serious purposes and clear meanings. There can be no doubt Yah gave the light the name day, and to the darkness the name night. Thus the work of the first day reckoned from morning to evening is accomplished. The period of light is followed by evening and darkness, which comes to an end with the next morning when the 2nd day begins. So in closing, the traditions of men causes us to err, so begin to observe the Sabbath as you have now learned from scriptures and not as traditions dictates. So I hope this lesson was able to clarify some of the confusion and misunderstanding regards to the Shabbat, when is the Shabbat day, when it starts, and when the Shabbats end. So in closing, I encourage you to continue to study, to show yourself approved, and hopefully this lesson, like I said, was able to clarify some of the misunderstanding surrounding the Shabbat day. So I leave in peace as I come to you in peace with the Hebrew word of peace. Shalom, shalom, shalom.
I have repeatedly offered $1,000 to anyone who can prove to me from the Bible alone that I am bound to keep Sunday holy. There is no such law in the Bible. It is a law of the Holy Catholic Church alone. The Bible says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." The Catholic Church says, "No, by my divine power I abolish the Sabbath day and command you to keep holy the first day of the week." And lo, the entire civilized world bows down in a reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. T. N. Wright, CSSR, in a lecture at Hartford, Kansas, February 18th, 1884. The Catholic Church for over 1,000 years before the existence of a Protestant, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. The Catholic Mirror, September 23rd, 1893. Question: which is the Sabbath day? Answer: Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea, AD 336, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Peter Geierman, The Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, 2nd edition, 1910, page 50. Question: have you any other way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept? Answer: had she not such power, she could not have done that in which all modern religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. Stephen Keenan, A Doctrinal Catechism, page 174. There is but one church on the face of the earth which has the power, or claims power, to make laws binding on the conscience, binding before God, binding under penalty of hellfire. For instance, the institution of Sunday. What right has any other church to keep this day? You answer by virtue of the third commandment. The papacy changed the fourth commandment and called it the third, which says, "Remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day." But Sunday is not the Sabbath. Any schoolboy knows that Sunday is the first day of the week. I have repeatedly offered $1,000 to anyone who will prove by the Bible alone that Sunday is the day we are bound to keep, and no one has called for the money. It was the Holy Catholic Church that changed the day of rest from Saturday, the seventh day, to Sunday, the first day of the week. T. Enright, CSSR, in a lecture delivered in 1893.
Thank you, Bishop.